Blazor WebAssembly applications allow us to create offline capable web applications in C#. But that raises the question of how do we store data locally so the application can continue to function while offline? In this lesson, we're going to utilize local storage to store data from a Blazor WebAssembly application. Now, if you want to really dive deep into Blazor, or if you're looking to add a new skill to your resume, head over to imtimcorey.com and check out my Blazor course. By the time you're done that course, you'll have the ability to conquer just about any problem in Blazor. So let's jump right into Visual Studio, and we're going to create a new project. We're going to choose the Blazor WebAssembly standalone application type. Now, if you notice, there's also a Blazor web app type. Now, if you're not familiar, I do have another video on this channel about the Blazor web app, an intro to that, because it's a new in .NET 8, and it's a mashup where it has inside of it Blazor Server, Blazor WebAssembly, server-side rendering, and more. So it's got all those things together. So why do we have a separate Blazor WebAssembly standalone application? Well, because the Blazor web app has server rendering as part of its core. But WebAssembly is the fully client-side project type, which means that it can run as a progressive web application, meaning you can install it on your phone, your tablet, or your computer as if it were an application, but yet still a web application. It updates just like a website would. Mostly it downloads in the background and runs the second time you run it. There's a whole lot more to it. We'll get into that later. But with a Blazor WebAssembly application, it has to be fully standalone, so it doesn't have any of that server-side stuff, so it can run fully in your browser. So that's what we need in order to have this offline capable application. So we're going to hit next. And we're going to call this our offline storage demo and offline storage demo app. I'll move this to my practice, and we'll call this app. Okay, so this is going to be a .NET 8. When .NET 9 comes out, it's going to be even better, but just use .NET 9, that's fine. We're not going to use authentication. We will use HTTPS. We will use a progressive web application. That just adds a couple of bits to it that allow it to work offline and be installable and those type of things. Yes, we're going to include the sample pages just to have something to start with. We're not going to turn off top level statements, and we're not going to use .NET Aspire for this project. Okay, let's create our application. And in here, we have just a basic web application. It's a Blazor application. Let's run it the first time just to see it run and make sure it does build. And the first time, sometimes when you run the application for the first time, you get this, which it says about blank and it doesn't actually run. The easiest way to fix this, close it out, start up again. It's just a glitch with how Visual Studio is starting this up. I'm not sure why it's glitching like that. It's going to fix at some point. But this is your home, where you have your home, your counter, your weather, and if you click the counter, it does increment. So that's your basic Blazor application. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take over this home page and kind of redo it and make it a simple to-do application. Now to-do applications have been done for a long time. They're a very simple demo, but the point here isn't the to-do app. And in fact, we're not going to implement a full to-do app. We're just going to create some simple structures around it in order to show us how to store data locally on the person's local machine in their local storage, and then how to retrieve that data so that the application can work offline. All right, so let's get started. And the first thing you need to do is add a dependency. So let's add a NuGet package. We're going to go to Browse. And we're going to search for Blazor. Notice it's with a ED at the end, .LocalStorage. All right. And Blazor.LocalStorage gives us this package, which is currently at just over 9 million downloads as of the time of this video. And the latest stable version is 4.5.0. It's a open source project that Chris Sainty supports. I would encourage you to go there, give him a follow on GitHub, give him a star. and encourage him because this is a very useful package. So let's hit install. And this is a very simple installation. Let's clear this out, make sure we don't have anything else. Oh, there's only one thing down here in one of our transitive dependencies that we have a dependency on. I believe it is a JSON that is vulnerable. It's something that they're working on. They're going to get a new version for. So not to worry too much about, just know that's what the yellow exclamation point is for. Okay, in program.cs, we're going to come down here to builder.services.addScoped. We're going to say builder.services.addBlazor LocalStorage. And control dot to actually have to add the using directive because it's not finding it. Maybe I misspelled it. We'll get there. There we go. I put the open close paren at the end, it found it. So using blazor.localStorage, it's adding that using directive at the top right there. So now we can add that local storage to our dependency injection. So that's it from a setup perspective. Now we can just use it, which is pretty awesome how simple that is. So let's save this and close it out and go over our pages. We'll go to home page and we're going to inject in here the iLocalStorage service. And I'm going to add the using directive right now. We're going to change it in just a minute. Add Blazor local storage. Oops. Nope. Local storage. There we go. Give it a name. Okay, so we're going to change. I was reading the wrong line at the same time. We're going to change this by cutting this out here, which is going to give us an error. And go down here to our imports. And I'm going to put this in line. So let's just paste that in here. Right. Come on. Well, the paste messed up, or I messed up. There we go. Let's cut this out and paste it. There we go. Finally, my cut and paste works. So now this is working again. We don't have to add a using directive on our page. I prefer that when we're ever going to use something that we're going to use in more than one location. In this case, we're going to use it in more than one location. So that gives us access to our local storage. So let's create a model for our, we're going to control hit shift A here. I selected the project type first. We're going to say models and to-do model. So we're going to create a model for our to-do item. Let's make it a file scope namespace by putting a semicolon there. And I'm going to put 3 values here. We're only going to use one really. I mean, we can show the other one, but let's say prop, date, time, and we'll say creation date. This we have it, and we'll say equals date time dot now. And yes, that is something to think about. Right now, it says now. You know what? I probably, because we're just to be for good form, we're gonna say UTC now. The difference is that now will be local to the time zone you're in. Kind of, because it's not the time zone that the client is in. Well, it can be with local storage. It's going to be tricky because it's going to be, well, is it the server that's running on or is it the machine it's running on? And that can be different time zones. And you don't want to mess with that with web applications. And so the best way to do it is UTC now, for the easiest way to do it, I guess, which is universal time code, which means it's going to be Greenwich Mean Time. And then you can always apply the local time zone to any date time and see what the local time would be for that. And it can always adjust based upon if you change local time zones, you know. So that's something to think about. Okay, so we're going to say prop string, and we'll say to do item. And one more just for completion's sake, bool is complete. And that's it. Now the string item, we're going to say that either it is nullable or we want to mark it required. I am going to mark it as, I'm trying to think. I think I mark it as nullable, even though I really don't want to have it be nullable necessarily all the time. But we're going to do a quick example of this. If I marked it as required, then you have to, when you instantiate this to-do model, put the to-do item in there, which is right, ish. I could also set it to be an empty to-do. I don't want to go there. So I think null is probably the best option for me right now. Yes, I know some people get irritated at these because it yells at you and you're like, well, I could be null already. But making you think about what are you going to do with null is important. And making you think about how you're going to make sure that that null is handled, or the possibility that null is handled, is important. And so I would encourage you to think these things through, not just make it go away. Okay, so now we have, now we have that done. We have a to-do model. Let's come down here and set up a code section on our page. We could do a code behind, but I'm going to do it in line for now because I like to have the visuals be in line with the actual HTML. So we're going to say private list of to-do model, and we're going to call it to-dos. And yes, that causes a problem because of the fact that it can't find that. Let's go over to imports and say using offline storage demo.models. They want that to be accessible from a number of places. Okay, so that's going to be a nullable list, which isn't great right now. I don't want it to, well, I want it to be nullable, but we wouldn't want to deal with it as null. We wouldn't want to use it as null. And then we also want to have a private to-do model, where I call this new to-do. This will be something that you work on, equals new. So this will be, the one to-do you're adding to the list. All right. Now let's get to-dos from local storage. Now you may say, well, there's no to-dos in local storage yet. Yes, that's true, but that's always been the case the first time you access local storage, but then you're going to create to-dos and save them to local storage. So the first step is to get them. So protected override, and we're going to say on initialized async. And I'll mark this as async as well. There we go. Okay, so in here, what we're going to do is we're going to initialize this page by looking up and seeing if there's to-dos in the local storage. And to do that, we say to-dos equals await local storage, which is our injected service. So local storage dot get item async. Now item is string, just get item async, and we're going to ask for a list of to-do model. All right, and we're going to call this to-dos. That's the key to look for. Okay, so let's take this time. By the way, I'm going to change this to be a lowercase d to match the model. So, all right. So I want you to kind of understand how local storage works because it's important to understand it so you know what to store and how. In local storage, it's a set of key value pairs. And local storage, there's two types of storage generally in web browsers. There's local storage and session storage. Now, we're not getting into IndexedDB and that kind of thing. We're just focusing on local storage. But local storage and session storage are practically the same. The difference is session storage only lasts as long as your session does with that website. So when you close the browser out, the session storage goes away. Local storage does not. Local storage works only for that site, So it's locked to only that site. It's not accessible by other sites, but it's only for that site, but it will work across sessions. Meaning you can shut down your browser, you can log off your computer, you can shut your computer down entirely. You can come back 5 days later, turn your computer back on, and that local storage will still be there. Now, if you do things like a deep clean of your browser, like you use something like CCleaner, or you do a clear all cache, well, then that would destroy your local storage. So this should be something that you think about. Local storage typically is a offline copy, not necessarily a source of truth. Meaning there's a session or there's a data somewhere in the cloud or a central server that has the database or the data, your data. But the local storage can be your copy of it. Now, in this case, we're just going to do local storage only. We're not going to hook up to a SQL Server or something else to store these to-dos. But it's something to think about as far as offline capable, because it is data that can be destroyed depending on what you do with your browser. But okay, so local storage and session storage are very, very similar. We're going to deal with just local storage today. How does it work? Well, it's a key value pair. It's like a dictionary. So you give it a key and it gives you back the data that's in the value. So here we're asking for the key of to-dos. Now, does that exist? No, but that's okay because we can ask for something that doesn't exist and it will just return null. And if it finds something, it'll give us the value of that key. So what this is going to do is it's going to give us back a list of to-do model based upon the key we gave it. Okay. So, and it's an awaitable. So we await for it. So we've said, this is generic. So we've said, I want a list of to-do model. That's what I stored in to-dos. Now, if you stored something else in to-dos, that's going to cause a problem. But this is on you to handle. Okay. It's on you to know what you're storing in what keys. So I'm going to use the to-dos key to store a list of to-do model. I'm going to capture that in to-dos. Now, the first time this runs on any computer, well, it's going to be null. So I should check for that. If to-dos is null, or to-dos.count equals 0. Okay. Now, I don't have to do this because, in fact, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to leave that alone. I could reinitialize if the count is 0, but I think it's fine to have an empty count. So we're going to say if to-dos is null, then to-dos equals new, meaning instantiate this list. So this will never truly be null. We're going to have null for a very brief period of time when we load it in from local storage if the local storage is empty. And if it is empty, then we're going to say, okay, then instantiate the to-dos list. So it's not null, it's just empty. Now, once we've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to debate. I think I'm going to leave this alone. It's up to you if you want to do something here or not. Tradition says we do something like this. I'll do it and I'll probably comment it out. Local storage dot set item async to-dos and the actual list, which that list is empty right now. So it would create an empty list, which means the next time this runs, it won't be null. It's just empty. Therefore, it skips this. So it would save us a little bit of work by doing this. The null check would be, it would pass as not null. So we could do this, or we could not do this and only create this to-dos element when we have a to-do to put in it. So it's up to you which way you want to go. I think I'll not create it until I have something to put in it. All right. So locally in our application, it's there and it's instantiated and we have an empty list. We just haven't stored it to local storage. All right. Now let's create, while we're here, the method private async task add to do. So let's create this method to actually add the to-dos. So to-dos dot add new to-do, which, by the way, remember up here we have the new to-do. That's the one we're going to, whenever you fill the form out, which we're going to have a form for this, when you fill the form out, it's going to instantiate or create a new to-do. Well, we're going to take that new to-do and put it into our to-dos list. And then we're going to reinstantiate that new to-do so we can add another one without stepping on toes. But finally, we're going to take this right here and paste it in. So we're going to save the entire list of to-dos to local storage in the to-dos element. All right. So we're taking the entire list and put it in that element. Now here, I know that this will not be null because we have this check immediately. So that shouldn't be a problem. But I'm glad it warned me so I can think about it. Okay. So add to do is going to add the to do to our list of to dos, and then it's going to reinstantiate the new one so we can put another value in there. And then it's going to take the list of to dos and put it into local storage every time. So is this terribly efficient? Well, yes and no. This is not a SQL database. This is not the, carefully craft where to insert and how to insert so that it's, using the best disk usage and memory usage and all the rest. This is local storage. Okay. This is basically just text data. It's not about being terribly efficient like a database. It's about being effective. Okay. And this is effectiveness, the way it works well, and we're ensuring that our list is always accurate. So this is just fine to do. And yes, this runs locally on every person's machine, which means that we're not doing this at a scale of 10 million people doing it all at once. Therefore, it could be a problem because of the scale or whatever. There's no scale issue here because this is on a per person's basis. So this will only ever be run on one person's machine, not across 10,000, because it would be on 10,000 machines then, each running on that one particular machine, not on the same one. Okay, so we now have our code for adding to-dos and storing them in local storage and pulling them from local storage. Let's actually do some work here. So let's create a page title. Hello is fine, but up here we're going to say to-do list, like so. And then we're going to get rid of this hello, welcome to your app thing. And let's create an entry called, let's put an H. Let's put an H2 here, and we're going to say add to do item. Okay, we're going to put a form under here. I think it's probably the first place to start. So we're going to say edit form. And again, if you don't know how Blazor works, Blazor is actually it's really powerful, and it's not that complicated once you understand the various bits. I do have a full course on Blazor. I'm actually creating a second course on Blazor that will be specifically for Blazor WebAssembly, the standalone app. But I have a full course on Blazor, and Blazor stuff translates from Blazor WebAssembly to Blazor Web Apps, and even to the older project types called Blazor Server and Blazor WebAssembly. It translates all those. It's really easy to use, but I encourage you to get that course, imtimcorey.com, or if you're on the Dev Pass, it's just included for free. So good stuff there. Okay, so model. We got to set up a model for our form. Well, our model is new to do. And then we're going to say on valid submit, we're going to add to do. And while we're here, this is, there we go. I mistyped it. So now we have our edit form. We're going to add our data annotation validator. We're not going to do any kind of validation. It's good to have these things in place so when you're already, they're there. And then let's create a div with a class of form group. And then inside of here, we'll create a label for, we're going to say new to-do dot to-do item, which did I use capital or lowercase there? I used capital. Interesting. Gotta love how I'm mixing the capital and lowercase. I'm gonna fix that right now. If you be consistent. Be consistent. So let's be consistent right there. New to-do item. And we're gonna call this to-do item. And yes, I can be inconsistent when I do this because that's user-facing versus the actual code itself. User-facing stuff and labels, do what works for your users. But when it comes to code, be consistent in the code. Okay, so now we have input text, and we're going to say ID equals, we're going to use this ID right here. That's why we did that. And the class equals form control. This is part of Bootstrap. And knowing how Bootstrap works will really make your design faster and easier on the web. Again, I have a course on that as well. If you're part of the Dev Pass, by the way, all this stuff just gets included for free. So I would encourage you to check it out. All right, bind value equals new to-do dot to-do item. There we go. And we're going to self-close that. And then we can add a validation message. So we have it here. Validation message for, we're going to say, a function. It'll say new to-do dot to-do item. So that's what's going to give us our validation messages. Whoops. That gives our validation messages for that to-do item if it's incorrect in some way. Okay, outside the div, we're going to say button type equals submit, class equals btn dash primary, and then we're going to say add. One thing I want to point out, and this is something that comes up a lot, people love to learn web first. This is kind of a side here. People love to learn web first, but as you've noticed, I've pointed out a couple times now, hey, you know what? Check out the Blazor course on this because it's important. We haven't even dealt with like async and all this other stuff that's really, C# generics. It would be the C# master course, but it's, stuff that's important to know before you even get in here. And then I, talked about, form control. Well, that's part of Bootstrap. You should probably know that in order to create easy, fast forms or easy, fast layouts for web, since we're using Bootstrap as our styling framework. And really even just classes and how they work and buttons and types. And that's just HTML and CSS, which is the Web Dev Master Course. What I'm saying is there's a lot of prerequisites when it comes to building a web application. And just saying, well, it's HTML, it's just divs and H1s, how hard could it be? There's a lot more to it, as you can see. Okay, so when you jump in first to a web application, you're building on top of HTML, CSS, maybe some JavaScript, but we're bypassing most of it. But HTML, CSS, C#, some pretty advanced C#, and Bootstrap, and in this case, Blazor as well. So there's 5 different major things you should have a pretty good handle on before you say, okay, now let's put these all together into a knowledge base that can allow me to build powerful web applications. Because with Blazor, you can build powerful web applications in minutes, but it's only if you have that foundational knowledge. And no, AI is not going to just do it for you because, yes, it could start to, and then it's going to have some problems, and then it won't work, and you won't know why, and you'll be stuck, and you'll have some serious problems. So it's about having that foundational knowledge. I encourage you, don't just say, well, the first thing I'll learn as a developer is web applications. Learn C# first. Build from the ground up rather than trying to learn at the very end and getting frustrated and feel like you can't do it. Okay, sorry, that's a little aside, but I want to point that out because I think it's important to understand so you don't get frustrated and so you don't feel like you can't do something. Okay, so what we have here is our edit form that allows us to add to-do to the to-do list. So when you hit the submit button, it's going to call the add to-do, which is right here. We talked about that, how it does it. And really, it's just one field. I haven't dealt with the completion and marking it complete and all the rest. We're not going to do that today. It's just about adding things to a list. So this is the one form or one field in our form that's just a text box that is going to show us the or allow us to add that to do to our form. Okay, that's it. Before we're done, let's go here and show off our to-dos. So let's start with a check to make sure that they're not null. If to-dos is not null. So if the to-do list is not null, then let's create an ordered list. And in this ordered list, we're going to do a for each. And we're going to say for each to-do in to-dos. And inside of here, we will say, let's create a list item. And we're going to say at to-do dot to-do item, like so. Okay? That's just a list. We could put in here the date time too. I'm not going to do that, but just know you can put the date time here too so you can see when it was created. And it's going to be different for every time you create a to-do. I'll leave it for you to do, but just know that you could do that here in line. That's it. That's our offline capable to-do application. Again, we're not checking off to-dos here. We're just displaying them. It's basically just a list with a bunch of entries. But I want to show you just how easy this can be to get something working with local storage. So we have our to-do item. It's not a great form. We should probably make that better, but that's okay. This is our first entry, and it's in the list. This is our second entry. Okay, and this is our third entry. Notice I didn't put a period at the end of the first one. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to close the application down. I'm going to run it again. And when we do, we have 3 entries in the list. It remembered that it's there. Also notice this little icon here. If I click this, we can install the offline storage demo app to our computer. It allows us to open a focus window, which basically means you don't see down where my cursor is here. It just shows a headless browser, it's called. It allows us to pin it to taskbar, allows us to put an icon on your desktop. It syncs across multiple devices. Really cool stuff you can do with a progressive web app. We're not dealing with that today. Also note that when you're debugging a progressive web application like we're doing here, it's not doing anything offline. You can't turn it to offline mode and have it work because of the fact that it's, for debugging purposes, is not doing that. If you do offline capable, then it's hard to debug. I get into that more when I cover Blazor WebAssembly. Okay, so let's pop open F12 here to see what we can see. Let's pop this out here. Let's go here. All right, so now let's look at our application. And if you go to local storage right here and look at our local storage for this URL, notice the key is to-dos, and the value over here on the right is this long string. But if you come down here, you can notice it's JSON format. Let's zoom in here a bit. The creation date, this is our first entry, is complete is false for all 3 entries. I could even come in here and I could delete this. I could come up here and say, you know what, edit the key. I can edit the value, which if I can edit this value, let's go right here and hit dot to put our period there at the end. And now notice that I have a period at the end here. It's not here yet because the page hasn't pulled from local storage yet. But if I go away from this page and come back to it, I don't know if you can see here, but there is a period there at the end of our first entry because I modified local storage. And if I wanted to, I could delete local storage. And if I do that, and then I close out of here and I come back to it, it's an empty list. Now I could go back to this and let's put the period back in so you don't forget this. And I can use autocomplete to fill a list back in and just add one more. Okay, so there is how to use your local storage with an offline capable app. You don't have to be offline to use it, but an offline capable app so that Blazor WebAssembly can access local storage, a caching mechanism. Now, I do have some pretty significant caveats to talk about, some things to be careful of, best practices and pitfalls to avoid. Okay, so let's talk about those. When it comes to using local storage, you need to be careful what you do. You absolutely do not want to store any type of secret value in your local storage. All right, so anything the user does not have access to, don't store there. Meaning, if you thought, well, hey, I can use local storage to store some kind of like API key, don't do that. The one kind of exception is the fact that you can use your token. You can store your token in either session storage or local storage. And yes, there's some controversy around that, and some people don't like to do that. It's fine. That's my take on it. Yes, it opens you up to 0.1% more attack surface than previous, but it's not like it's opening up to 50% more attack surface. There's a lot you have to do in order to really attack a token in local storage. Again, only the site that is that stored it there has access to it. Other sites do not. There's not a way to get it cross local storages. So, but don't put sensitive data there. Even if the user has access to some sensitive data, you might think about not storing it there. Let's just say that your application would display, I don't know, social security numbers or other, government ID numbers that are more secret. So your web application might display those. I would encourage you not to if ever possible. But let's just say you do that. Well, you would absolutely not want to cache those values in local storage. What I would do is cache the other information that's not sensitive, but then leave that field blank, like blank it out before you put it into your local storage. So that way, yes, you can still work offline, but you don't have access to the secret or sensitive data because while this is pretty locked down, if a person has access to your computer, they can read it in clear text. And so another thing that some people say is, well, hey, let's just encrypt that because then it's encrypted and you can't read it. Well, that improves your situation by, again, a very, very small percentage because of the fact that how do you encrypt it? Well, you have to do that on this machine. So this machine then has access to decrypt it, which means it's not really that safe. And so you don't want to invest a whole lot of time in something that really doesn't make that big of a difference. The only difference is if I pop open these tools, it's not as easy just to read in plain text. So yes, there is a little bit of benefit, but not a ton. So that's something that, I would not encourage you to go overboard on, okay? Don't think of local storage as a safe place to store. So what is local storage good for? It's great for caching. It's great for offline use because if the user has access to the data, then the user can see the data, right? So if I'm looking at this to-do list, because this is my to-do list, let's see, it's on a server, there's all these different people's to-do lists, but this is mine. Well, why would it hurt for me to see this list in local storage? It wouldn't, because I can see this on the web browser. So it's not a problem to see this data in local storage if I have access to it on the web. Again, the caveat or the restriction on that would be if it's sensitive data, I wouldn't store it there because of the long-term storage and all the rest. So with that, just note there is a absolutely huge value for local storage with Blazor WebAssembly applications. And I would encourage you to learn how to use it and use it. Just be careful when you do that you are using it wisely. Any tool that is used for good can also be abused. Don't abuse it, use it for good. All right, so that's how to do local storage. Again, just kind of review. We added that one NuGet package. It's blazor.localstorage. That's right there. We added the entry to our services to add that, the local storage handlers to our services. And then on this page, we injected that. And then down here, there's a get, and then there is a set. And that's all you really need to work with local storage. All right, thanks for watching. And as always, I am Tim Corey.